Okay. So this isn't a question that I was actually planning on asking, but given your passion for esports and how vocal you seem to be on them, I wanted to know, where do you think esports are in terms of the general populace in the consciousness of the world, and how long do you think it will be before they're on the same level as traditional sports?
Is this is this question esports is in the professional side of the sport, or is this like games as sport esports?
That's How about we approach it from the first one first, and we'll see where we go from there. The games as like a traditional sport.
I don't know. This one's weird. There's like all sorts of like I think there people talk about if there's an esports bubble, is there not a bubble? I don't really want to like speculate too much here. I don't want to get in trouble for speculating too much. I'll just say this. If I had a kid right now, I wouldn't let my kid play football because I don't want them to get a fucking concussion, and that game is like very dangerous for them. Youth football participation rates are dropping. Baseball viewership has been like baseball as the favorite pastime in the US has been dropping substantially. We've seen video games as sports, the professional versions of those be some of the most viewed um sporting events depending on where you are. And yeah, the numbers are like I hate when people talk esports numbers because they never compare apples to apples of like what it means to watch to watch the Super Bowl versus what it means to watch Worlds. All I know is this: the general trend is that and I'm not saying whether it's going to be League of Legends or Valorant or CS:GO, what the esports. I'm saying esports as a whole, professional video games will is continuing to increase, and I think depending on the traditional sport, we're seeing decreases in. And here's where you need to look for like the leading indicators. What are the kids doing? What are the kids doing, right? Because if kids are playing less and less sports, if kids are playing less basketball, if they're playing less baseball, if they're playing less hockey, if they're playing less football, that does a few things. That hurts the viewership of those games later on, and it hurts the cultural relevance of those games, and it hurts what those kids are going to raise their kids doing. Where I think it will really start to take place is when Gen Z starts to have kids, millennials and Gen Z, but especially Gen Z. Gen Z grew up in a time when video games, and again, if I'm only talking about the US, this is already happening faster in other countries. I think we'll actually see it happen faster in Korea and China and a bunch of countries in Southeast Asia. We will see it happen in North America, I think, when Gen Z has kids, because Gen Z grew up with video games being culturally relevant, largely due to Fortnite, actually, Minecraft and Fortnite. Because they played those games and that was like culturally significant to them, they will likely share the sort of joys of gaming with their kids as well. And that will be a sort of significant tie in between Gen Z and then whatever the generation of kids are that they're raising. Again, you'll start to see it as millennials have kids, but millennials are still not as digitally savvy um as Gen Z, who literally fully grew up in a digital era.
Yeah.
Again, the other thing you have to look at is look like when people talk to me about like traditional sports, I'm also like, look at the age of people who watch the NFL. In fact, one second, I'm gonna
Oh,
Google
we're,
this real
we're gonna
quick.
look up stats on the fly right now. Um, just to fill some time while you're looking that up, I actually super agree with what you're saying, and I just wanted to share my experiences because I know personal experiences are always anecdotal, and that never has any real like outcome on what the actual data is. But I don't know a lot of people right now with kids who are putting them into sports. I don't know a lot of younger people who are interested in sports at all. They're all interested in either video games or neither. So having that cultural experience just isn't leading to where the next generation is gonna be like, hey, I want to play football, or I want to play soccer, or I want to play baseball. I don't see it in my experiences, and I don't know anyone who sees it in their lives either.
Average NFL viewer is 50. Like, so yeah, when people laugh at me when I talk about this idea, I'm like, dude, the NFL is aging.
Mhm,
Like I'm not saying sports are going to go away in general. I think sports will still exist. I think there's two that I will if you were like Nathan, you have to bet money on which sports stay around. I think basketball and soccer stay around. I think those two stay around. Partly because of their accessibility.
mhm.
But like, people were like in this article alone, they're like, hey, like should the NFL consider shorter game length? Should they change rules to increase scoring and create more excitement during the game? Should they invest in more apps to engage viewers in play-by-play activity? Should they seek out ways to allow more gambling during the game? Like these are all the questions asked. And do you know what's so funny? Tell me when the NFL does that, because it took the NHL a really long time to make those rule changes. Meanwhile, guess what companies are willing to be like, "Yeah, you know what? This sport, fuck it, we'll change the rules all the time. We'll add in a completely new sport. We'll apps that you can or like ways to engage viewers with play-by-play or like fun apps that we can include in the game, you know, random side things for the game. Cool. That's literally what esports have. Like they have such a huge edge over traditional sports in that way. The other thing I say on a broader note is like I look at the kinds of human activity that were popular in the 20th century, whether it's sports, whether it's going to concerts and whatever it is, and I'm like, "Cool, take all of that stuff in the 21st century, we're gonna be doing that digitally. That's just how we're gonna do it." I'm not even saying it's gonna be crazy with, like, VR and AR. I don't really, like I don't think that that's even necessary. I think people can literally just sit at their computers and do shit like we've all been doing in quarantine from COVID. People are gonna go to concerts in Fortnite. I mean, I called it as Fortnite is the 3rd place, but now they've announced that they're gonna do a viewing of Inception within Fortnite. God knows what cool special effects, Epic has plans for that, but, like, that's gonna be sick, right? And in general, I'm like, yeah, I think you'll see whether it's at the professional level or at the amateur level. I'm not saying physical sports will go away, but you will see digital sports, esports be on the same par with them, very soon. If you had to give me, like, the actual time to guess, it's when Gen Z starts to have kids, is when it will, like, fully overtake.
Yeah, and I like that you mentioned, the quarantine making sort of a proof of concept for it because, yeah, we have seen a lot more, evolution in how people are reacting to things. Movie theaters are shutting down, whether permanently or temporarily. We're having more people planning for a more remote workforce. Like my job personally, reached out to me and they said, "Would you be interested in working remote full time and stuff like that?" And we're seeing that these ideals that have just sort of been clinging by a thread for the past 30, 40 years, even in the tech world, which you would think wouldn't be anchored to that, they're finally getting snipped off and they're finally getting released. And we're seeing people being like, hey, maybe we don't need people coming to the office every day. Hey, maybe we don't need to be in person for every single meeting. Hey, maybe we don't need to be doing this for every single that. And I think it did take a drastic change of lifestyle for everyone to reach that point. And I think personally, we are living in a time where we'll look back in 60 years, willing we live that long, and we'll see it as a big shift in how culture in general is.
Totally. Yeah, I think this will be a huge, huge sort of moment in human history.